Hello, everyone. With the airing of episode 6 last Saturday, we get the true account of a story we've been told, the hive a buzzing, a lesson in gaslighting, and a ship rises from the murky depths to sail again. Before we get into the review, I'd like to thank everyone who has subscribed so far and encourage y'all who haven't to do so to be informed on when I upload a new video. And of course, to leave a like as it helps the channel grow. With that out of the way, let's get to it. First and foremost, I give this episode a 9 out of 10 rating. Volume 9 continues to be a wild ride, and it's pretty clear it's only going to get wilder from here. We open up the episode with Jean falling alone in the void. The sounds of battle ring out around him, or perhaps in his head. Penny being wounded, Weiss falling and Winter calling her name, and his scream as he follows through with Penny's request and ends her life. As Jean looks around, he sees Crescent Rose falling in a ball of fire and angles himself to go after it. However, he reaches the Ever After before he reaches it, and washes up on presumably the same beach as the rest of Team RWBY. He works his way inland, and when he stops to catch his breath, he notices a tree up ahead, with a large clock set in the center of it and smaller pocket watches hanging from vines. He approaches the tree, and decides to do what is known as a pro-gamer move by plucking one of the pocket watches off of the tree. Unsurprisingly, this turns out to be a very bad idea. The plucked pocket watch, in fact all of the watches, stop. And then they start winding backwards rapidly. And as they do, the sun begins to go down as time in the Ever After literally starts to go backwards. We see lights shoot backwards past the sky, these being Weiss, RWBY, Blake, Neo, and Yang as they arrive in the Ever After, and time spins back further and further and further, faster and faster, until Jean throws the watch to the ground and smashes it with his shield, destroying it and bringing the reversal of time to a stop. But by then, the damage has been done. Jean is who knows how far into the past, and with how things went the first time he plucked a watch from the tree, he likely isn't too keen to make that decision again. And so, Jean goes back to the beach, and waits. For years, he waits for Team RWBY to arrive, his hair growing and armor rusting, until one night he sees two blue streaks of light shooting across the sky. Then we cut back to Team RWBY and Jean in the Lotus Flower, as he tells them his tale, and he asks if it's really them. RWBY assures him that they are, and they all go in and give Jean a group hug, including Little, because hugs are valuable, and Little spends them freely. After the hug, RWBY asks how Jean knew to find them, Blake asks how he could possibly be the Rusted Knight, and totally doesn't reflect on the smut she wrote about the Rusted Knight, and Yang asks when he got so mature. Only it wasn't Yang who finished that sentence. It was Weiss, practically purring the word mature. My little dinghy of a ship sails on. My fanboying aside, RWBY asks Jean what happened after they fell, and Jean lets out a breath and says that they have a lot to catch up on. And in the next scene, they have left the marketplace and are in a new acre of the Ever After. This appears to be the papier-mâché acre we got a bit of a look at in the trailer. As for how they got there, we see Team RWBY leaving a cave, so somehow the Lotus Flower must be connected to a tunnel system? I'm not going to question it too much, honestly. The girls are working over what Jean told them, and they clearly aren't taking it well. Salem has two of the relics, and she can get another with Cinder being the Fall Maiden. And since Cinder can steal maiden powers, that means she could get access to the fourth relic as well. Blake points out they at least evacuated Mantle and Atlas and got everyone out, everyone who was left at least, and Weiss counters, saying that they put their home at risk to save the relic and failed, while Blake insists that getting people out has to count for something. RWBY, however, says that there's no point in saving anyone if Salem gets all of the relics. Yang says that RWBY doesn't mean it, that was how Ironwood thought. And I will say, I agree with Blake here. They were never going to beat Salem and Atlas, even if Ironwood hadn't gone cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Evacuating both cities was absolutely the right move, because if they tried to stand and fight, all that would have happened is everyone dies and Salem gets the relic, meaning that things are even worse. No, Team RWBY's plan wasn't perfect, but it was a hell of a lot better than Ironwood's, which was literally just deciding to fuck off into the sky, trying to wait out the immortal witch lady who wants something you have. Obviously, I have some thoughts about Ironwood, but that deserves its own video. Getting back on track, Jean interrupts them and says that they need to keep moving before the weather turns, or it's going to take them much longer to get to safety. Team RWBY falls silent, and he collects himself and tells them that they'll have time to lick their wounds later, and they need to move. In case it wasn't already obvious, the Ever After has had an effect on Jean. And while the information he's sharing with Team RWBY is new for them, he's lived with it and more or less come to terms with the situation by now. Though it's important to note that it seems like John hasn't yet said anything about Penny or what she asked of him yet. Most likely, he's either waiting to tell them once they're somewhere safe, or perhaps he intends to wait until they're back in Remnant, though I seriously doubt that it won't come out this volume. As they walk, Yang asks John where he's taking them, and he informs them that he's taking them to his village, which means that John has moved out of the little shack he built on the beach and has made some kind of life for himself in the ever after. We didn't get to see what that looks like this episode, but hopefully we'll get a look at what his life has been like in the ever after. He states that he's impressed that they made it all the way from the Crimson Keep on their own, but Blake tells him that they weren't alone. They had help. Then she looks around, notices they're missing someone, and says that she hopes that the cat is okay. This brings Jean to an immediate halt. He asks in a serious tone, "What cat?" And as though on cue, the curious cat arrives, quite literally tumbling over himself. The curious cat says that he finally found them and seems surprised to see Jean with them, saying that it has been an indeterminate amount of time since they last saw each other, and as we'll see in a bit, there's a reason for that. Weiss is surprised that the cat and Jean know each other, but RWBY says that they'd have to, since they were both in Alex's story. Jean takes the arrival of the cat not great. In fact, he looks downright ready to kill him on the spot and is only stopped by Blake and Yang, who are completely confused by his anger at the cat. Blake insists that the cat is a friend, and he can help them leave the ever after. Jean shakes them off and says that they don't have time for this and need to get to his village, and he says that they don't need a guide. And the cat informs him that Team RWBY wanted to go to the tree. This makes Jean even angrier, and Blake tells him that's how Alex got out. And then the reasons for Jean's anger become more clear as he looks at the cat and says that he didn't tell them anything. It would seem the cat has been less than fully honest with Team RWBY. The cat defends himself, saying that he's told Team RWBY several things. Weiss demands that someone start making sense, and Jean cuts straight to the point. The tree is what causes ascension. It takes you, absorbs you, erases your memories, and turns you into something else. If Team RWBY goes to the tree, it will erase who they are. That is what happened to the herbalist. He was taken by the roots of the tree. Now, there's something worth noting about Ascension that I didn't think about when we first learned about it last episode. As I said before, it's reincarnation, but it's reincarnation without a choice. You can't control when or why it happens. It just happens. And if for some reason it doesn't happen to you when it's your time, then it's really only a matter of time before the cat comes along, gives you a bit of his heart, and gets you sucked down a hole. In the ever after, your purpose is everything, but that's a double-edged sword. Because if you can't complete your purpose, you're remade. You don't get a choice in the matter. If you just have a really bad day, like the Red King did, then you're gone, back to the ever after to be remade, with no say in the matter. Now, some of the same could be said for death in our world or in Remnant, but the difference is that we won't just kill over on the spot because we had a bad day and didn't do our jobs well enough. We have agency. We have choice. The people of the ever after do not have that. When they're returned, who they were is destroyed. All of their memories of their previous life are wiped away and they're turned into a clean slate to start over. And to an extent, that doesn't sound so bad, right? It could be nice to start over, not be burdened by the past. But there are two problems with this, at least in my mind. One, you don't really get a choice in the matter. If you lose your way, the ever after is going to remake you. If you, a fisher, wake up one day and decide you'd rather be a farmer, then instead of you being able to make that choice and change for yourself, the ever after just erases and remakes you. Maybe you'll be the same as you were before, or maybe you'll be different. Maybe you'll become the farmer you wanted to be in your previous life. But the thing is, you don't know that, because you don't know who you were before. Which leads to my second point. Our choices and our life experiences shape who we are, in particular our failures. Yang put it best back in episode 4. Her losses, her failures, more than anything shaped her into who she is now, showed her how she needed to grow. Imagine if, after Yang had lost her arm, she was just remade from scratch and had her arm back. No losses, no failures, but no growth either. She never changes, never really matures. That is a big problem with Ascension. It doesn't let you change while still being you. If it were a matter of personal choice, say someone had lived a long and fruitful life full of both joys and regrets and decided they wanted to ascend at the end of their life, then that would be one thing. But there's no agency, no free will. You don't get a say in the matter, and you don't get a say in what you become. But getting back to the story, the cat insists that the tree won't take any of them as they aren't of the ever after, but Jean refutes this, asking what happened to Louis, Alex's brother. This completely throws the girls off. There was no mention of Alex even having a brother in the fairy tale, and if something as significant as her brother isn't even mentioned in the story, then that brings the validity of the entire tale into question. Yang asks the cat why he never mentioned him, and the cat says that they never asked about him, always asking about Alex, which is another classic example of lying by omission, which, as we will see, is something that the cat has been doing a lot of. Before they can really get into it, the thunderstorm that's been rolling in overhead rumbles, and Jean puts his weapon up, saying that he has a plan to get them out of the ever after. The cat responds that his plan hasn't done him any good in the long years he's been in the ever after, intentionally or otherwise forgetting that Jean has been waiting for Team RWBY to arrive, and thus hasn't put his plan into action yet. Yang asks them both to stop and let them all process, but the cat says that they seem to be at a crossroads. As soon as the words leave his mouth, Jean realizes what's about to happen, and a bolt of lightning crashes behind him. The screen goes white, then black, and we hear Jean say, "Damn it," in an almost exasperated tone. And then we see a tangle of bridges coiled like vines going every which way with glowing portals set on them. This is a punderstorm, a physical manifestation of a mental or emotional problem. When the cat said they were at a crossroads, he triggered the storm to do its thing, and it scooped up Team RWBY and Jean. According to Jean, the only way out is to either wait the storm out or solve the problem. Weiss calls the ever after the pits, and in response, the punderstorm opens a pit up under her which she falls through, but reappears moments later, falling from the sky. Jean tells them to get a move on so they can resolve the issue quickly, but RWBY realizes Blake and Yang aren't with them. Jean, however, isn't concerned and just says that they must have had something more important to work out. And as we'll see, he isn't wrong. Yang and Blake are standing on rickety bridges overlooking a very long fall. In the middle is a pillar to which the bridges are attached. Yang calls out to Blake, asking what they should do. Blake says that they need to reach the central pillar, presumably since it'll be safer to stand on than some rickety wooden bridge. Yang looks down at the long fall below and wonders how they can take the next step. And the camera falls into the clouds, and the scene transitions to Jean, Weiss, and RWBY. The three of them are walking along one of the stone bridges when it ends in a fork with a wooden signpost, with one arrow pointing left and the other pointing right. The left arrow bears Jean's face, and the right has a cat paw on it. This is the crossroads where they have to choose between listening to the cat or to Jean. But Jean is a bit impatient here. He's clearly been through a punderstorm before and just wants to get this over with. As he said earlier, he has a plan to get them all home, and I imagine that after who knows how many years in the ever after, he is more than ready to go home. He tells them that this would go faster if they made up their minds, and in the next scene, they're walking down the left path, his path. He's leading the way, so he may have just decided to start walking and not wait, or Weiss and RWBY chose his path. Which wouldn't be surprising. They've known Jean far longer than they've known the cat, and thanks to Jean, they caught said cat in a pretty big lie. RWBY says she doesn't understand how the story is both real and fake as they pass through a portal that takes them to another segment of the maze, and as they walk through they pass by these flat pillars of water that seem to show what's on the person's mind, or what's burdening them the most. And as RWBY walks by one, we clearly see what appears to be a reflection of Summer Rose, walking in lockstep with her. Jean says the story did happen, but not how it was presented in the book. As he talks, he stops and looks into one of the pillars and sees Penny before he moves on. Weiss stops before another pillar, and we see an image of Atlas falling before she moves on and asks Jean if he's saying that Alex lied, which is exactly what he is saying. Jean tells them that he waited years for Team RWBY to fall, but two other people arrived before them, Alex and her brother Louis. He told them that he was from Remnant 2, and that he was waiting for his friends. Once he started helping them, it didn't take long for Jean to realize that he was in the story of the girl who fell through the world, that he was the Rusted Knight. But things weren't always the same as in the book. Alex wasn't just a little petulant or inconsiderate. She was selfish, cruel. She saw the ever after as make-believe and didn't think the rules applied to her. Her brother Louis, on the other hand, was the kind one, the clever one. They went places that weren't mentioned in the story, such as meeting the herbalist. But something about Alex changed there. Whatever the herbalist had told her, it had made her paranoid. She started accusing the others, presumably including her own brother, of things. The more Jean tried to get the story back on track, the more Alex distrusted him. He worried if it was his fault, if he changed the story somehow, lamenting that he couldn't even be the make-believe hero. Which, if it wasn't obvious already, makes it pretty clear that Jean isn't doing alright. As Jean narrates these events, we see Alex pluck a poison berry and add it to a stew of some kind, which she then hands a bowl of to Jean. And as Jean accepts and drinks it in the flashback, he says a line that seems to come straight from the book. The rusted knight drank the poison in her stead. Before she walks away, Alex said to Jean that she wouldn't let anyone stop her from leaving, that she would do whatever it took. And as the scene fades back to the present with Jean, Weiss, and RWBY, you can briefly see the cat's eyes appear beside Alex, watching Jean lay on the ground, poisoned. Which pretty heavily implies that the cat knew that Alex poisoned Jean, probably even watched it happen, and left him lying there. No, I can't imagine Jean trusts the curious cat one bit. Jean says that the girl who fell through the world isn't exactly his favorite fairy tale anymore, and really who could blame him, holy shit. But RWBY asks why Jean doesn't trust the cat. Staring at an image of his younger self, he goes on to explain that he figured out the cat's role in the Ever After when he came back for him, after Alex left. When people in the Ever After lose their way, the cat convinces them to either continue performing their role, or to go to the tree for a new one. The cat, he says, was never helping Alex or Team RWBY. He was manipulating them to go to the tree. RWBY asks him how he can be sure, and Jean replies that the cat took both Alex and Lewis to the tree, and only one of them made it back to Remnant. With that, he turns and keeps walking, leaving RWBY and Weiss to contemplate his words as they follow him. Now, I'm sure some of you have already noticed this, but there are a few holes in Jean's story, mainly due to a lack of information on his end rather than him holding something back, but we'll get to that at the end of this review. We then cut back to Blake and Yang on the bridge. The wind blows hard, making the bridges they're standing on rock and sway. Yang asks if Blake is okay, and Blake says she will be once they're together on the platform, and then a step in the bridge appears at her feet, letting her move up a bit. Seeing this, Yang thinks it must be some kind of password and calls out platform and together with no luck. She says that whatever the key here is, she's sure Blake will figure it out. She's good at that kind of thing. Blake asks if she means that, and Yang, ever the verbose one, says of course. Blake has a very good brain. And then another step appears in her bridge. Riding this high, Yang states that Blake has cat ears. We cut to Blake, who, yes, does in fact have cat ears, and one of her ears is a cute little flick thing, and it's adorable, but nothing happens. So Yang says that she thinks that Blake's cat ears are cute, and another step appears. You see where this is going yet? If you don't, then don't worry. It's going to be real obvious soon enough. Yang steps forward, cheering that she nailed it, though she doesn't know what it is yet, and Blake says that it might be saying things to each other that they've never said before. Yang gestures for Blake to go, and Blake goes straight for the heart. She says that Yang is an extraordinary person, which causes Yang to go from flirting and funny to stars in her eyes in a heartbeat. Like, look at this face. Yang said she thought Blake's cat ears were cute, and Blake just went for the proverbial throat and said that Yang is an extraordinary person. And because that wasn't enough, she goes on to say that Yang is the first to lighten a situation, that she acts bravely when she's afraid, and she does what she says. At that point, several steps appear for Blake and she advances. Meanwhile, in the background, the wind is starting to die down, and the sky is growing lighter and lighter. Yang responds that she likes how Blake was never intimidated by her, even when she didn't like her that much. Blake says she was just wary about people in general back then, but Yang goes on to say that Blake never gives up on them. She never gives up. She knows what matters to her. And as Yang moves several steps forward, she suggests that they make this move quicker and asks if there are any big truths they haven't dropped on each other yet. At that moment, the sky goes from gray to pink behind Blake and yellow behind Yang, as they both realize that, yes, there is a big truth they haven't shared with each other yet. Before either can say anything, the platforms retract and Blake asks if Yang thought of something but didn't say it. Yang blushes as she realizes just what this is all about and what they need to say to each other. Yang thinks about what she needs to say and how to her it's like a cliff, and if she says it, she'll fall. But Blake somehow seems to respond, or at least understand what she's thinking, and says that they're already falling. And I mean, they're in a weather formation that creates physical manifestations of emotional dilemmas. I'm not willing to rule out telepathy as a thing that can just happen in one of these storms. Blake tells Yang to just say it, and Yang does. She tells Blake that she thinks she loves her, and Blake immediately responds that she loves Yang. And then they're on the platform together. The storm clouds are gone, the wind has died down. As they look at each other, grass grows on the pedestal and vines wrap around it, flowers blooming along their length. And after many, many years of waiting, Blake and Yang share their first kiss as flowers bloom around them. I have to say, I personally am not a big Bumblebee shipper. I have no problem with the ship or anything, it's just never been one of the ones I felt particularly drawn to. But this entire sequence with them was nothing short of beautiful. The setting, the music, the lighting, the words that were shared, everything about this scene was beautiful, and it's making me tear up a bit just talking about it. So congratulations, Bumblebee fans. I know y'all have been waiting for that for a very long time. Now back to the depression. While Blake and Yang suck face, Jean, Weiss, and RWBY are in a place that just sucks, still walking and trying to reach the end. This, of course, is when the cat decides to make his reappearance, walking along another path that winds over them before dropping down onto theirs. RWBY and Weiss step forward and confront him, saying that Jean told them about how the cat gives afterins, first time that term has been used I'm pretty sure, to the tree, and want to know why he hasn't been telling them the truth. And the cat doesn't deny this. In fact, he admits it. When afterins get all, as he puts it, higgly-piggly, or whatever, he helps them return to the ever after, but that won't happen to them, he insists, since they aren't of the ever after. He's taking them to the tree because they have so much information for him. Weiss presses the point, saying that the cat pretended he knew nothing about the story Alex wrote when Jean had already told him about it. And the cat's response isn't to deny this or try to defend or explain himself, but to question Jean's sanity. And shit like this is why RWBY and Weiss are easily siding with Jean over the cat. Outside of the simple fact that they've known Jean for much longer, Jean has been much more open with them about, well, everything. He hasn't withheld important info or omitted things to make them see events his way. While yes, the information he's given them has almost certainly been colored by his own experiences, he's told them the truth as he knows it. He has not lied to them. RWBY asks the cat what happened when he took Alex to the tree, and he says he doesn't know. Alex apparently promised to bring the cat with them into Remnant, but she tricked him. And then the cat gets back on his bullshit and claims that Team RWBY tricked him as well, saying that they used him to get to the tree just as he uses others as sources of knowledge and entertainment. Now, I'm no psychiatrist, but this is pretty clearly some grade A fucking gaslighting. They never tricked or lied to the cat. They were very upfront about their arrangement with him. Help them get to the tree, and they'll tell him everything they can about Remnant. That was the agreed upon arrangement, and Team RWBY had honored it. The cat, however, withheld some pretty critical information, such as the fact that the tree is the source of Ascension. That's some pretty important information to have when said tree is your destination, after-in or not. Especially since from what we've seen so far, Remnant folk absolutely can undergo Ascension if RWBY's discussion with the blacksmith is anything to go by. And of course, there's the fact that the cat didn't say anything about Alex's brother, or that Jean was in the Ever After and had been waiting for them. And he absolutely would have known that Jean was waiting for his friends, and could have pretty quickly figured out that Team RWBY were said friends. But instead of telling them, hey, your good buddy Jean is here and he's been looking for you, he chooses to lie by omission about that and many other things, and thus destroys any trust the girls had in him. And sure, I get it, Alex betrayed him. She didn't take him into Remnant with her, and that probably made him wary of trusting other Remnant folk. And the cat is probably telling the truth about that, if for no other reason than he has thus far not spoken any actual lies, just not given the whole truth. But even then, the very fact that the cat has so intentionally been picky about what information he gives Team RWBY calls even this into question. He says Alex betrayed him, but why did she? Did he do something that made her decide to renege on their deal? Did he betray her first in some way? We don't know. And until the cat starts being more open and forthcoming with information, I don't think anything he says can really be trusted. Jean isn't the most reliable narrator either, and we'll get into that later on, but he at least has been honest and open with his information and experiences in the Ever After. The only thing he hasn't brought up yet that needs to be discussed is what happened with Penny. and I would guess that he's waiting either until they're settled in at his village and can discuss things to bring that up, or he's waiting until they're back in Remnant to have that discussion. And side note, if the tweets and such we've been seeing from RWBY thus far is anything to go by, episode 7 will most likely be the episode that the Penny discussion is had. Regardless, the cat manages to pluck at RWBY and Weiss's heartstrings because they are totally not in an emotionally vulnerable state after everything that's happened, but Jean is unmoved. He knows cat shit when he smells it, and the litter box is full. RWBY says that they just want to go home, and the cat bids them farewell, thanking them for this lesson like he didn't do it to himself, before the pillars of water all break apart and the thunderstorm comes to an end, leaving them all standing in the same valley that they were in when the storm caught them. And they see Yang and Blake pushing their tongues down each other's throats. It's a good thing the thunderstorm ended when it did, because if things had gone on for any longer, they probably would have started losing clothes. RWBY and Weiss are shocked, but Jean is as unfazed as ever, just smiling a bit and saying that it feels like he's been waiting forever for that. And he kind of has when you think about it. We then cut to Jean's village. We don't see much of it outside his home, so hopefully we'll get a better look at it and the people living there next episode. Inside, the girls are resting. Weiss is sipping tea, Yang and Blake are sitting hand in hand before a fireplace or oven, and RWBY is sitting at a table, watching Yang and Blake with an unreadable expression. Jean gets RWBY's attention and walks into the room with a box, setting it down in front of her. He says he's been holding on to something for her, that it was the first thing he saw when he was falling. What else he says is drowned out as he opens the box and shows RWBY Crescent Rose. Rather than being happy to have her weapon back, RWBY's reaction is less than pleasant. As she stares at her weapon, this strange, almost static crackles in her ears and the edges of the screen start to go dark, with these strange, shadowy shapes crawling up the screen. They look like some kind of tendrils. Or roots. I don't think the cat's assertion that remnant folk can't ascend is correct at all, because the tree seems to want RWBY very badly. And the expression on her face is not a happy one. She looks like she's on the edge of having a panic attack until Jean calls her name. The others are clearly happy for her, but it's just as clear that they missed how she reacted to seeing her weapon, which again goes back to my issue about the rest of Team RWBY seeming to be unaware of RWBY's troubles, but I won't get into that again here. As Jean goes back into his room to rest for the night, RWBY asks him what happened to Louis. Jean tells her that he thinks that Alex gave her brother to the tree to buy her passage back home, and then wrote him out of the story. With that pleasant theory, he turns in for the night. RWBY looks down at her weapon, still in the box, and seems to make some kind of decision. The episode ends with her slamming the box shut, her weapon still inside. I think this is a good time to start delving into some theories. Let's talk about my favorite topic in RWBY first, Jean arc. Primarily, let's talk about how much validity there is in his story. Now obviously, Jean has been in the Ever After for a long time, and isn't exactly doing great emotionally, but I don't think he's crazy or is massively misremembering events. While his memory has been colored by time, I seriously doubt it's been changed all that much. I believe that Alex was a cruel person, and what little we've seen of her so far corroborates that idea. Think back to episode 5, when RWBY picks up what she thinks is Penny's blade, but is in fact Alex's dagger. In each of the 3 weapons we get a look at, we see the face of their owner in them. Penny is bright and cheerful, just like how she was in life. What I'm assuming is Summer looks proud and heroic. But Alex glares out from within the dagger, looking angry and, well, cruel. So I don't think the idea that Alex was a cruel person is just a result of Jean's memories of her being tainted by his poisoning. Likewise, everything he said about the cat was pretty much on the money. The cat himself even confirms what he says, his only defenses either being to deflect or play down what's said, or in one case not so subtly call Jean crazy. Really, the only thing Jean has said that seems truly questionable is what happened to Louis and Alex, because neither he nor the cat, supposedly, were present for. Which leads nicely into the next theory that I and many other people have. I don't think Alex was the one that made it back to Remnant. There's a lot of hints that Alex is still in the Ever After, most damningly her dagger being in the blacksmith's forge. But there are also more meta hints as well, such as Louis also being the name of the author of Alice in Wonderland, the story that the Ever After and the Girl Who Fell Through the World are based off of. What I think happened, at least with the information currently available to us, is that after Alex poisoned Jean, she got the cat to lead her and Louis to the tree, but at some point along the way she ditched him and brought her brother to the tree with her. Alex tried to give her brother to the tree to buy her passage home, but something happened. Perhaps Louis resisted, or perhaps the tree chose her instead, but Alex was taken by the Ever After, and Lewis was the one to return home. In time, he would write the story of the Ever After, writing his sister as the protagonist with both qualities of himself and his sister, rather than putting himself in the story, and changed events to make the story more lighthearted, or to depict characters like the cat or Jean as more heroic figures. In fact, the line, "The rusted knight drank the poison in her stead," plays into this idea. Rather than it being Alex poisoning Jean, the scene was depicted as the rusted knight making a sacrifice for Alex's sake. It makes more sense for Lewis to write Jean in this way rather than Alex. If how Jean described Lewis is any indicator, they got along much better than Jean and Alex did. And if Alex is still in the Ever After, which seems likely, then I think it's possible that she wants to get back to Remnant, and is willing to do whatever it takes to get there. Remember that part in the intro where a girl, who we now know for sure is Alex, is standing on the same bridge that Yang and Blake confessed on with her back to RWBY? And when she turned around, a leaf from the tree flies past the screen, and suddenly Alex is RWBY, wearing a near manic grin. Alex seems to become RWBY or take her form after a leaf from the tree flies past the screen. The same tree that we now know is responsible for Ascension. I'm calling it now. Alex wants to somehow make herself into RWBY so she can leave the Ever After and have RWBY take her place in the Ever After. Or it's all a plot Neo cooked up, since after Alex RWBY falls off the bridge, the scene cuts to a sugar cube falling into a cup of tea held by Neo. It's one of those two, I'm pretty sure. I'm also pretty sure that this was my longest review yet. I have another theory that I want to discuss, but I believe that deserves its own video, so I'll do my best to get it out for y'all by next week. What did y'all think of this episode? Who is more trustworthy, the cat or Jean? Do you think Jean was right about Alex giving her brother up to the tree? And do you think that's what Team RWBY will have to do in order to return to Remnant? Spoiler alert, that's what my next theory video is about. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Please leave a like and consider subscribing to my channel for more content. My goal is to reach 1,000 subs by the end of this year, and I have plenty of RWBY content coming outside of just reviews once Volume 9 is wrapped up. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and never forget to keep moving forward.